GitHub repository. Repositories. Right. So in couple of lecture, we are talking about the preliminary phase where we are defining the architecture capability. Right. Now the thing is that so far what we have seen that what is the purpose, what are the steps we need to follow while we are in the preliminary phase, right? So now, right. So now the approach also we have seen in our last lecture, right? So where I was talking about the where I was talking about that how you can approach to define your enterprise. See, there is one thing which I want to mention it here that whenever we are talking about the preliminary phase, we see entire organization point of view, not only the project point of view. That is one thing which we need to understand that in the preliminary phase, this particular phase, the second. Right. So in the preliminary phase, right, it is for entire organization, not specific to your project, right? So this is entire organization. You need to see, for example, you are working for the accounting system project, okay, or the financial system or some system, which is a part of the organization. But you need to know that entire organization point of view. Yes, definitely we need to know the who are the stakeholders, who are the, what are the different business units. So that's why it is called the preliminary phase. So, so here we see entire organization point of view. What is the organization setup, right? What are the senior level stakeholders, right? For example, you are working on a project, right? Some project, right? You have a team. Do you bother about that? Who is CEO of your company? Who is CTO of your company? You're not bothering that, but you need to know, right? Because if some news comes about your company shares, right? So you know that you when you see your manager, right? This is your manager, and this manager to whom it is reporting. Does it matter to you? It does not matter to you, but yes, you need to know, right? Because if a particular email comes from manager's manager, so we'll say, oh, he's our manager's manager, right? He's CIO, he is CTO, right? So if the mail comes from that level, it means we need to take that seriously. You won't say that, okay, I will only follow my manager's, whatever my manager is saying. So preliminary phase is always, entire organization point of view. Here you can see define the enterprise, the scope and the boundary of the organization and the key stakeholder. The enterprise could be a business, government body that we have discussed, right, last time. Now, the another question which comes into our mind that, okay, we know that preliminary phase is the first phase, or it is before phase A actually. It is setting up the architecture capability at the enterprise level. Plus, It gives the organization setup, right? It gives the participants, those are senior level, right? Those are senior level, not only project level. Okay. So project level we define from the phase A. Okay. I hope you guys are understanding what I'm saying. The preliminary phase, the senior level stakeholders, which is on the organization level, not only on the project level teams. Now, another things that, okay, you are the enterprise architect and you are in the preliminary phase. Okay. Why you are in preliminary phase? Because first you need to know the organization setup, right? Now, it means when we are talking about the organizational setup, so the participants, they will be on very senior level stakeholders. Okay. So let us understand the participant, right? So this we have already discussed in our last lecture. Right? So this we have already discussed. Right? So let us talk about the participants. Right? So now, any idea who will be the participant in the preliminary phase? Any guess? Hmm? So I'm
I
saying organize. Yeah.
yeah, I believe somebody from the governing body.
Hmm. What will be his or her position? What role name you will give?
Maybe the chief technology officer.
Very good. So John is saying CTO. And okay, CTO, CEO, right? So these are the or business executives. Or maybe strategy heads. No, they are the participant, but why? Why do you think that these are the participants in the preliminary phase? See, whenever any project gets started, it needs a sponsorship, it needs fund, right? Which is coming from the client, right? But there is a client is not talking to the maybe the enterprise architect directly. The everything comes through a channel. So CTO, CEO, business executive, they comes into the picture. So they are the sponsor. Okay. And they will only approve the architecture capability. See, you get a team, but who will decide that this will be your team lead, or this team is to be means we need to have a budget, we need to approve certain things. So those are coming from these people. So without executive support, enterprise architecture always fails. For example, you are saying, I will use AWS for the cloud support, but from where the fund comes, who will sponsor it? If you are saying my budget is $1,000 per month, and if it reaches to $1,500, who will pay $500? Okay, if some blunder happens, someone has deleted entire database, who will be responsible, right? So yes, that team is responsible, but ultimately the project and other things, right? So these all are sponsored by these people. That's why we need it. Who will be the second participant? One is these people, right? Which is CEO, CTO, business executive, strategy head. Who else is participating in this preliminary phase? Enterprise architect, right? So enterprise architects, because he's getting all this information. So why he will be important? Any idea? Enterprise architects, what he will be doing in the preliminary phase.
Because this will discuss, mainly on the organization level.
Hmm. Very good. Excellent. Actually, that is good one. See, consider you are the enterprise architect, right? You are about to start a project, but you are in on the client side. You are on the side where you want to create the project. Maybe it is your company itself, and you have not started the project. You are still in the requirement gathering. You are still identifying the scope. You are still identifying the, you know, uh, to understand the organization setups. So if you are a enterprise architect or architect team lead, then what will be your role? If you meet to some person, how do you introduce yourself that I'm going to do what? Raghu, any idea? All right. So enterprise architect is the participant first of all. Where will be you can say chief um, enterprise architect, right? Or leader means lead of that enterprise architect. So they are basically participating in the preliminary phase. What will be their role? See, remember we have discussed about the architecture principles, right? And we have discussed that statements, implication, rationale, right? All these things. So those are defined by the enterprise architect. So they are defining, okay, this will be the architecture principles, and this will be the statement, this will be the rationale, this will be the implication. That is first thing. Second thing, they they can propose a governance model. Okay, they can propose a governance model. Okay, so they can design the architecture, they can design the architecture uh, as per the organization structure. If something is to be integrated or modified in the TOGAF framework, so that will be um, so that you can say tailor TOGAF framework. Right. So enterprise architect is basically define the architecture principles, propose the governance model, design the architecture as per organization structure, and tailor your TOGAF framework. So these are the key drivers. So we call it key drivers in this phase. Right? Is there any other one who participated in this? So one is the higher management, right, which is CEO, CTO, business executive. Second is enterprise architect. Anyone else, do you think? Okay. So
So solution architects won't be there, right? That is on the phase three, right?
you are very close. So IT leadership team, you can say. Okay. So there is one which is called the um, IT leadership team, because ultimately we are converting, um, you know, means our current IT capability and how it will be aligned to the architecture. So those things will come from the IT leadership only. So IT leadership is IT directors, okay, infrastructure head, application team or application heads. So they will be participating. Now, what will be their role? Their role is to provide the current IT capability. Okay, so they will provide the current IT capability. Okay, that IT capabilities, and they need to make sure that what architecture we are going to define, it should be aligned to the IT strategies. Okay, so the architecture should be aligned to IT strategies. Okay, so IT leadership team. Good. Who else? So there is a architecture board team. If it exists, so they are also participating. So here in the architecture board team, like senior architects, business leaders, and who else? Senior architects, business leaders, IT governance members, right? So architecture board is the one which basically the one who is approving the architecture principles, right? So architecture principles are defined by the enterprise architect, but who will approve it? Architecture board team, right? So their role is to approve architecture principles. They will also approve the governance framework, right? So, so in that case, because architecture principles are defined in preliminary phase, so approval is through the architecture board only, right? Now, next is the um, we are in the preliminary phase, so we are defining the governance model also. So it means governance representatives, those who are basically dealing with the risk and compliance or audit, they also participate in this. So next one is governance and compliance representative. What they do? They are basically they are governing or compliance. So you can say risk and compliance team, right? So whenever you are going to design the architecture principles, you need to take care of the risk and compliance, right? There will be audit, how the audit will work. So audit representative also be the part of this preliminary phase. So what will be their roles? They need to ensure that governance structure is aligned with the policies. So what they are doing, governance structure is aligned with the policies. They are also defining the control mechanism. Okay, control mechanisms, right? So how a particular what is the boundary, right? So what, for example, I'm a IT head or I'm from the IT governing body, so I can only give the approval for the IT related stuff only, right? Right. So these are the main those who are basically participating in the preliminary phase. So what are those one? Let's note down. First is the executive. Second is enterprise architect. Third is IT leadership team. Fourth is governance, governance or compliance team. Fifth is um, architecture board. So main, those are the main uh, teams, those who are participating. Is it clear to both of you? Any question?
No.
Okay, good. I think look who has left. All right. Okay, so we have finished our preliminary phase so far. Let us see some commonly asked questions related to this. Now, probably you can easily answer that, or you can easily understand those one. So let us open that one. Right. Preliminary phase and FAQ. That participant part, I will add it. Okay. So the question is, what is preliminary phase in TOGAF? So it defines the enterprise architecture capability, which is having governance, right? And organization setup, right? Stakeholders on the organization level. So here, the preliminary phase is the first step in the TOGAF ADM, right? This is first step. So it prepares the organization by defining how enterprise architecture will be developed, governed, and managed. Right. Now, next one is that why preliminary is required actually. Why it is important? Because it is the set of foundation of all future ADM activities. Without this phase, organization may lack of clarity, governance, tool, and principles needed for the architecture work. Okay, so that is the purpose of this preliminary phase. Because if there is no governing body, there is no architecture principles, then how we can proceed with the other phases? So this is required. This is very important part. What are the main objective of the preliminary phase? Now you understand that we first is the architecture capability we define the architecture principle that also we have discussed, set up the governance structure, right? Understand the organization context, select the method, tools, and framework, and establish a architecture repository. Right? So these are the main objective of the enterprise. So basically, uh, what we are doing, we are defining the guidelines for our architecture principle. Like for example, I want to convert my manual work to digital world. So in that case, digital transformation is my architecture principle. Maybe you want to say that I want to migrate my on premises environment to the cloud-based environment, then cloud first approach. Okay. Then how the data will be accessible. So it will be accessible within the organization, outside the organization also, right? So those guidelines we define under the architecture principle only, right? And when we are talking about the architecture repository, so repository is nothing but it is the one where you are having your documents, right? Remember we have discussed about the architecture building blocks, standards, past project documents, maybe some reference model. So everything is under this particular repository. So it's a knowledge library for the architect. So, so I hope this point is clear. Let us understand what are the architecture principles. These are the rules and guidelines, right? As I mentioned, these are the rules and guidelines that shape all the architecture decision. Example, cloud first approach, data must be shared across the organization. What is architecture repository? As I explained you, right? So it is having a structured place to store reference model, standards, architecture building blocks, past object documents, architecture landscape information. So think it as a knowledge library for the architects. Right? So now, next is that what governance is defined in the preliminary phase. See, uh, governance means who will basically give something which is approved, something which is rejected, something compliant. So all the decision making statements are done by the governance body. Okay. So here we have discussed that we can create the architecture board where we can define the roles and responsibilities, decision making statements, and compliance mechanism. So this is the governance uh, which is in the preliminary phase. Now, next is that what are the tools or frameworks are chosen in this phase. So in this phase, you will definitely, if you are going with the architecture, enterprise architecture, right? So you need to decide that how you will, what framework you are going to use. So for example, we are using the TOGAF framework. If you want to define something, diagrams, like you want to create a database diagram, you want to define some technical diagram. So you are using, say an example, Visio, you are using Archimedes, right? That is modeling language tool. You are using some other tools, right? Documents like Confluence or the SharePoint, right? Your where you will keep your repository, right? Like in under the Jira, you can maintain your day-to-day activities, right? So these are the tools mostly we use in this phase. Next one is, does the preliminary phase create any deliverables? So yes, architecture principle document, okay, that is created in this phase only. Governance framework, enterprise architecture charter, right? Tailored ADM TOGAF method and architecture repository. So these are the deliverables in this phase. This we have defined multiple times. All we have defined and discussed multiple times. Right. Right. Now, next is, what is tailoring in the preliminary phase? So it means, for example, you want to skip certain steps or you want to add certain steps which is out of your TOGAF framework. So the those are basically the those are preliminary phase, right? So in the ADM, when you are saying tailoring a preliminary phase, so it means customizing your ADM to fit organization needs. Example, skipping the certain steps or adding the organization specific steps. Right? Who is involved in the that we have discussed? Enterprise architect, CIO, IT leadership, business strategy, stakeholders. architecture governance, and enterprise tool administrators. How does preliminary phase connect to the ADM phase A? We will discuss that. So this is basically phase A. Also, we are defining the scope, governance, repository, etc. But that is more on the project level, whereas the preliminary phase is on the organization level. Okay. So once the foundation is ready, phase A, which is called the architecture vision, uses the principle, right, and define to, right. So, right. So uses the principle, governance, and repository define here to start developing the architecture vision and scope. Okay. So I hope now points are clear related to the enterprise uh, architecture preliminary phase of the ADM actually.
Yeah, Raman.
Do,
Yeah.
do you have any question?
Well, nothing so far.
Okay. Okay. Now let us move to the next phase, which is phase, phase A. Now, when we are talking about this phase A, which is also known as architecture vision. Now, here, what we are doing, we are basically uh, in this phase, we are basically setting the foundation of the architecture work. So you can say that phase A, okay, phase A is the initial. So this is the initial phase that defines high level scope, direction. It's not detailed, okay? It is the high level scope. For example, I would say as an enterprise architect, I will say, okay, we need to migrate the on-premises environment applications to the cloud-based environment. So that I will mention. But what technology is to be used, whether we need to use AWS or Azure or something else, right? So those things are not defined in this phase. This is a high level scope, okay? High level directions and approval for the approval for enterprise architecture initiative. So in the preliminary phase, we are talking about the organization level. In phase A, we are talking about now project level. We are creating a very high level scope. We are creating very high level, um, what we are going to do. It's not in detailed. Okay, so you can say it's a kickstart the architecture development process. So here you should have a clear vision what architecture needs and outline the problem the architecture is trying to solve. Okay, let's take one example. For example, you are having on-premises, on-prem servers, right? So there is a lot of downtime. There is a, you know, um, there is a penalty from the customer because these servers are down sometimes for long hours. Latency is another issue, right? So now in phase A, you will say we are converting this on-premises environment to the cloud-based environment. Okay, so this is the clear-cut statement and very high level. And what we are achieving they need a replication of the server. They need zero downtime. They want to define certain SLA, etc. So those things we are going to solve. So we also call this phase as a discovery phase. This is known as the discovery phase, where initial concepts and strategic objectives are defined or identified. Do you understand means uh, what is architecture vision A? Let me repeat one more time. So this is the foundation for the architecture work. So whenever you will start working like in the technology point of view or data point of view, so this is the foundation of that. This is initial, okay, but it is very critical phase that defines the high level scope, direction, and approval for the entire architecture initiatives. So it helps you to um, establish that what we need to achieve and how we need to achieve. Okay, so an example here, what we need to achieve: on-premises environment servers to be migrated to the cloud-based. How we will achieve, right? So not detailed, first of all. It is a very high level, uh, you can say roadmap, architecture roadmap is getting created. So how we will achieve, you can say there will be users, uh, means we need to migrate their application to the cloud-based environment, right? You may identify the technology, but technology phase is separate phase. Okay, so what will be the strategy, objectives, right? So those things are identified here. So what and how, right? So that is basically in this particular phase. Right? Now, here also we are defining the problem. Problem means the problems which we are going to solve. So the business problems which we are to solve. Okay, so that is what we are doing, and we need to know what is the objective behind this. What is the objective of, because they are going to give this project for 1 year, 2 years, maybe 5 years. What is the objective behind that? So what is the problem and the objective of the architecture project? Here, we are also defining the boundaries. Let me ask one question. Do you have the requirement here in the in the phase A? Do we get the requirement?
Well, I believe that is not necessary because this is only the vision.
Mhm. You are partially correct. Requirements are required. See, otherwise, how we will know the business problem, right? So, business problems, you will say, okay, they are facing and we need to convert on premise, but these requirements are very high level, not in the detail level,
Yeah. Okay.
right? Because they are saying, okay, enterprise architect, we are having certain problem that our on premises servers, they are down. And once it is down, we need the hardware engineer, system administrator, network engineers. They come and they are fixing this issue, and it takes days, and we get a lot of penalty. So it means you are having an idea that what is to be done in a very high level. Plus, if I say in other words that the requirement is in a very high level language, high level, uh, you know, we are having those requirements defined. Right. Now, we are also defining the boundaries. Boundaries means what to be included and what to be excluded. So you that make sure that whatever is the goals we are having, or we say strategic goals, so you need to align with that. So you need to know what is to be included, what not to be included, so that you can focus on your project. Now, the right. So these are the purposes. First, define the business problem which we are solving and its objectives. Second, boundaries, which is basically you are telling that what is included, what is not included or excluded, so that you can focus on the part of the project which is included, right? So unnecessarily you should not work on the architecture part which is not required. Another thing is that in this phase, identifying the stakeholders and concerns. What does it mean? Now you might be thinking, hey, stakeholders we have already identified in the preliminary phase. Then why to identify again in the phase A? We already know who are the stakeholders. Now, those stakeholders which we have identified, that was on the organization level. Now we are talking about our project level. Okay. So the architecture needs to address the key needs uh, of business leaders, IT end users, etc. Okay. So we identify stakeholders which are basically on the project level. Then we need to understand what are their needs. Needs means what is their requirement, actual requirement. Okay. So whether a stakeholder is related to the business, or you can say business leader, whether this is IT head or maybe others, right? Maybe end users also. Then needs is one thing, and concern. Okay. Concern and need, these are two different things. Concern means when they are saying, okay, I need This functionality is to be there. But what will be the timeline? So timeline is a concern. Cost is a concern, right? And right. So these are the uh, you need to identify the concerns also in this phase. You need to create some metrics to manage the expectation as per their needs, right? So what are the things? First, we identify the problem, right? What solution we are providing? What are the objectives? We are also creating the we are also identifying stakeholders and concerns, right? Uh, Fourth one is first, second, third, fourth one is you need to create a architecture vision. Architecture vision. Vision is nothing but it's a uh, summary of, or you can say summary answer to the problem and values. So the architecture vision should answer that what is to be developed and why. For example, what architecture is trying to solve? Migrating on-premises environment servers to the cloud-based environment. Why it is important for the organization? Because it solves a lot of problems. So that is the architecture vision summary or architecture vision, you can say. You can also say that um, high level business values, not in detail, but high level business values that is to be delivered. And and just uh, you need to make sure that what is the architecture work we need to do. Okay, so that is basically our architecture vision, right? So problem, which problem we are solving, what are the boundaries, stakeholders and concerns, right? Architecture vision. So when you are ready with all these things, so you need to take the approval from the stakeholders. You need to give a high level diagram. You need to create the high level diagram for the business needs and you share with the stakeholder and get and obtain their approval. So once you have the approval, then you can proceed to the next phase. Otherwise not, right? Now, so so in this phase, what we are doing, we are basically ensuring that right resources, budget, everything uh, is to be taken care in this particular phase. Let us let us go to our documentation quickly. Whatever I have explained, it will be there. So if I go here, phase A, purpose. So this is purpose. So here you can see the architecture is the foundation, right? So this is the foundation of the architecture work. And here what we are defining what and how. And this is the architecture vision purpose. Initial phase for the ADM context, kickstart for the architecture development process. The goal is to establish clear vision and what architecture needs to achieve, outline the problem of the architecture trying to solve. It is essentially the discovery phase, what initial concepts and strategic objectives are identified. These are the points which I have discussed: defining the scope, problem, and project, identifying stakeholders' concerns, and create the architecture vision, obtain the approval to proceed. Okay, so these things we will discuss maybe tomorrow. Do you have any question?
Well, not on this actually. On the preliminary phase, I just want to, ask you one thing. Okay, so we are creating some deliverables, right? For example, architecture principle document, governance framework, enterprise architecture chartered, then tailored TOGAF ADM method and architecture repository structure.
Mhm.
So, are we going to discuss this further? For example, like how the architecture principle document looks like. What are
Templates.
the components? Yeah.
Yes, yes. I will show you the. I think I have shown last time, isn't it? Let me show you one. There are some standard documents, right? So if I go, so this is the open.
Okay. So it is already there in open group.
Yes, yes, it is
Okay.
there. We follow this one.
I see.
So here you can see that these are the table of content, right? And not this one. This is the definition, I believe, not the template. Will hang on. Yes. So if you see this one, I think this one we have discussed business principles and their rationale and implications, right? And but there is a template also.
I see. Okay. I will take a look
S-
into open group.
Yes, yes, it will be there. Let me search for template only. Okay, we can see architecture principle template. So this is a doc, it's MS Word document is opening.
Yep. I think just leave it. I will take a look. Maybe
Yeah,
if I couldn't find it, then I can ask them.
I'll share you in tomorrow's lecture.
No worries. Right.
Yeah.
Raman, can I just ask you one thing? Something out of topic.
Mm-hmm.
Since you're working, or you worked a lot in the DevOps side of it, right? I
Mm-hmm.
just got a clarification.
Can I
So
stop recording or
yeah,
you
yeah,
want?
please, please.
Okay. Yeah.